At 29, I thought my life was finally perfect. My husband Rick, 30, and I just welcomed our daughter May into the world, a tiny miracle we dreamed of for years. But joy turned to dread faster than I could have imagined, all because of one woman, Rachel, Rick's 53-year-old mother. From the start, Rachel made it clear she didn't approve of me. While I got along well with Rick's sisters, Anna, 28, and Emily, 24, Rachel loomed like a shadow over every family gathering. She wasn't just difficult, she was suffocating. Her need for control knew no bounds. She dictated everything from what her kids should wear to how they should live their lives. Rick once confided that growing up under her thumb left scars he still carried today. For me, Rachel's disapproval felt like walking on eggshells daily. Every smile she gave seemed laced with judgment, every comment dripping with passive aggression. I tried to win her over, cooking meals she liked or pretending not to notice when she criticized my choices. But nothing worked. The harder I tried, the colder she became. It was as if she saw me as an intruder threatening her fragile grip on her children. Little did I know then, this tension would spiral into something far darker, a nightmare I couldn't escape. When Anna announced her wedding date, my heart sank. It was set for the same day as May's due date. As much as I wanted to support her, I knew I couldn't take on the role of bridesmaid, not in my condition. The thought of standing for hours at a ceremony while heavily pregnant felt impossible and, frankly, selfish. But telling Anna was one of the hardest conversations I've ever had. I braced myself for disappointment, anger, even resentment. Instead, Anna surprised me with kindness. She smiled warmly and said, "Don't worry about it. You'll already be busy taking care of my niece or nephew." But Rachel? Oh, she didn't handle it so gracefully. From the moment I broke the news, her disapproval radiated like poison. At first, it was subtle snide remarks about how important weddings are and how they only happen once, as if I needed reminding. Then came the guilt trips. She cornered Anna during family dinners, whispering loud enough for everyone to hear. "How could you let this happen? Your sister-in-law should know better than to ruin such a special day." Her words cut deep, not just into me, but also into Anna, who suddenly found herself torn between loyalty to her mother and compassion for me. Anna tried to mediate, suggesting we reschedule the wedding photo shoot to include me after May was born. But Rachel wouldn't hear of it. "Nothing can disrupt Anna's big day," she declared, her voice sharp enough to slice through steel. That phrase haunted me. To Rachel, my pregnancy wasn't a miracle, it was an inconvenience. Worse still, she began pressuring Anna to scrap any plans involving me altogether. Every time Anna mentioned wanting me there, Rachel would pout, sulk, or outright explode in tears. It was exhausting to watch and devastating to live through. I felt like the villain in Rachel's twisted narrative. Here I was, carrying her grandchild, yet she treated me like an intruder threatening her perfect vision of Anna's wedding. Each passive-aggressive comment stung more than the last. Once, at a pre-wedding gathering, Rachel openly criticized my choice of dress, saying it drew too much attention away from Anna. Never mind that I'd chosen something modest and comfortable for my soul and body. All she cared about was maintaining control over every detail, even if it meant alienating her own family. What hurt most was seeing Anna caught in the middle. She adored her mother but refused to abandon me. One evening, she pulled me aside and whispered, "Don't listen to her. You're part of this family now, and nothing will change that." Her words brought tears to my eyes, but they couldn't erase the tension simmering beneath the surface. Rachel's behavior grew increasingly erratic. She started calling me daily, insisting I reconsider being absent. When I politely declined, citing doctor's advice, she accused me of exaggerating my condition. By the time the wedding approached, I felt like I was walking on shards of glass. Every interaction with Rachel left me drained, anxious, and questioning whether I truly belonged in this family. Little did I know, this was only the beginning of a nightmare far darker than I could have imagined. Rachel's reaction to my absence as a bridesmaid was nothing short of explosive. She didn't just express disappointment, she made it clear that she blamed me for ruining Anna's wedding plans. At first, her disapproval came in subtle jabs during family gatherings. "It's such a shame," she'd say with an exaggerated sigh, loud enough for everyone to hear, that some people can't prioritize what truly matters. The implications stung. I wasn't just failing Anna. I was selfishly hogging the spotlight. Then came the insinuations that cut deeper than any direct accusation. One evening, while we were discussing table arrangements over dinner, Rachel turned to Rick and said, "Funny how certain things always seem to happen at the most inconvenient times, isn't it?" Her eyes locked onto mine, cold and calculating. It was her way of suggesting I planned this my pregnancy. May's due day, as if I orchestrated everything to steal Anna's moment. The audacity of her words left me speechless, but I swallowed my anger. I told myself it was just wedding stress talking, not the real Rachel. But Rachel didn't stop there. As the weeks went by, her behavior grew increasingly suffocating. Every day brought a new text or call demanding my involvement in wedding preparations. "You should help pick out the floral arrangements," she'd insist, ignoring the fact that I could barely stand for more than 10 minutes without feeling faint. When I politely declined, citing doctor's advice, she accused me of being lazy. "If you cared about Anna, you'd find a way," she snapped once, her voice sharp enough to make me flinch. The worst part wasn't the physical toll, it was the emotional exhaustion. Each request felt like another weight pressing down on me, another reminder that no matter what I did, it would never be enough for her. I tried to stay calm, reminding myself that this was temporary, that Rachel's behavior stemmed from her need for control rather than genuine malice. But the line between frustration and fury blurred with every passing day. By the time the wedding approached, I felt like I was walking through quicksand, drowning under the weight of Rachel's expectations and thinly veiled hostility. What terrified me most was the realization that this might only be the beginning. If Rachel acted this way over something as simple as wedding details, what would happen when May arrived? The thought kept me awake at night, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. Little did I know those fears would soon become reality. The wedding day arrived, and despite my swollen feet aching back, and the overwhelming exhaustion that came with being 9 months pregnant, I was determined to be there for Anna. She had been so supportive of me throughout my pregnancy, and I couldn't bear the thought of missing her special day. I chose a simple maternity dress, nothing flashy, just something comfortable enough to get me through the ceremony, but Rachel's glare followed me everywhere. Her disapproval radiated like heat waves, making it hard to breathe even before the physical pain set in. Midway through the ceremony, Rachel leaned over to a guest and loudly remarked, "Some people just can't help but draw attention to themselves, can they?" Her words were sharp, dripping with disdain as she gestured vaguely toward my protruding belly. My cheeks burned, but I bit my tongue, reminding myself that this wasn't about me, it was Anna's day. Still, Rachel's comment lingered in the air like poison, tainting what should have been a joyous occasion. Then came the cramps. At first, they were a mild, a dull ache that I tried to ignore, but within minutes, they intensified into waves of searing pain. Panic bubbled up inside me as I realized what was happening. May was coming, now. I excused myself quietly, clutching my abdomen and trying not to alarm anyone. As I made my way upstairs to the restroom, Rachel appeared behind me, her expression unreadable but undeniably cold. Inside the bathroom, the situation spiraled out of control faster than I could process. My water broke a sudden, horrifying gush that left me trembling and gasping for air. I called out weakly, hoping someone would hear me, but the music from the ceremony drowned out my cries. That's when Rachel stepped closer, her eyes narrowing with determination. She snatched my phone from my shaking hands and locked the door behind her without a word. "Rick will come after the ceremony," she said flatly, her voice devoid of empathy. "You'll ruin everything if you call him now." I stared at her, incredulous. Was she serious? "Rachel, please. This isn't about the wedding anymore, our baby is coming." But she didn't listen. Instead, she slipped my phone into her purse and turned the key in the lock, leaving me trapped inside. Alone, vulnerable, terrified. To make matters worse, Rachel returned to the reception and lied effortlessly to anyone who asked where I was. "Oh, she's resting," she said with a dismissive wave. She looked exhausted earlier, so I suggested she lie down for a bit. No one questioned her. Why would they? To them, she was the doting mother-in-law who always knew best. Meanwhile, I sat on the bathroom floor, clutching my stomach and sobbing uncontrollably. Each contraction felt like fire coursing through my veins, and the knowledge that no one knew where I was or how dire the situation had become made it infinitely worse. I pounded on the door until my fists ached, screaming for help until my throat was raw. But the walls were thick, and the noise from the celebration below drowned out my desperate pleas. For a moment, I truly believed I might die in that bathroom with May still inside me, fighting for life alongside me. The thought sent fresh waves of terror crashing over me, and I collapsed against the tiled wall, tears streaming down my face. Time blurred together. Minutes felt like hours as the contractions grew stronger, more relentless. Just when I thought I couldn't endure another second, the door finally burst open. It was Rick, his face pale with panic. He scooped me up immediately, shouting for someone to call an ambulance. Only then did I realize he must have discovered the truth and confronted his mother. Looking back, those moments in the bathroom haunt me to this day. Being abandoned by someone who was supposed to care for me, not just as a daughter-in-law, but as a human being, was one of the most isolating experiences of my life. And knowing that Rachel prioritized her own warped sense of control over the safety of her grandchild fills me with a mixture of rage and sorrow that I may never fully shake. Trapped in the bathroom, I felt like the walls were closing in on me. The contractions came in relentless waves, each one sharper and more unbearable than the last. My body trembled with exhaustion, sweat pouring down my face as I clutched my swollen abdomen. I pounded on the door until my fists ached, screaming for help until my voice cracked, but the music and laughter from the wedding drowned out my cries. No one could hear me. No one was coming. Time seemed to stretch endlessly, each second dragging by like an eternity. My vision blurred and I slumped against the cold tile floor, gasping for air. I thought about May, my unborn daughter, who deserved a chance at life, and the crushing realization hit me. We might not make it. The thought of leaving Rick alone, of never holding our baby, filled me with a terror so profound that I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened and darkness began creeping into the edges of my consciousness. Was this how it would end? Locked away, forgotten, while the world celebrated outside? Then, suddenly, there was a loud crash, the sound of wood splintering. Through the haze of pain and despair, I heard Rick's voice, frantic and desperate. "Oh God, no!" he shouted as he burst through the door. His face turned pale when he saw me crumpled on the floor, soaked and trembling. Without hesitation, he scooped me up in his arms, whispering reassurances I barely registered through the fog of agony. The ride to the hospital was a blur of sirens and flashing lights. Rick held my hand tightly, his grip almost painful, but I didn't care. It was the only thing keeping me tethered to reality. Every bump in the road sent jolts of pain coursing through my body, and I begged him to hurry, terrified that May wouldn't survive much longer. Rick's eyes were wild with fear and anger, though he tried to mask it for my sake. I could see the storm brewing behind his calm exterior. He knew exactly what his mother had done, and the betrayal burned in his gaze. When we arrived at the hospital, everything moved in a whirlwind. Doctors rushed around us, shouting orders and hooking me up to machines. I drifted in and out of consciousness, vaguely aware of Rick pacing beside me, his hands trembling as he ran them through his hair. Hours later, or maybe minutes, time had lost all meaning. I awoke to the soft cry of a newborn. A nurse placed May in my arms, her tiny body warm and fragile against mine. Relief washed over me like a tidal wave, but it was short-lived. The memory of being locked away, abandoned by someone who should have protected me, left an indelible scar on my soul. Rick sat beside me, tears streaming down his face as he held us both close. For the first time since the ordeal began, I allowed myself to believe we were safe. But beneath the surface, fury simmered not just at Rachel, but at the fragility of life itself. If Rick hadn't found me when he did, I couldn't finish the thought. When Rick found me in that bathroom, trembling and drenched in sweat, something inside him snapped. The moment he realized what his mother had done locking me away, while our daughter fought for her life, he turned into a man I'd never seen before. His voice was low but laced with fury as he confronted Rachel outside the hospital room. "You almost killed them," he spat, his hands clenched into fists. "If I hadn't found her when I did, do you even understand what you've done?" Rachel tried to defend herself, tears streaming down her face. "I was just trying to protect Anna's day. You think I wanted this?" But Rick didn't budge. He cut her off mid-sentence, his tone icy. "No more excuses. You're dead to me from now on. And if you ever come near my family again, I'll make sure the law keeps you away." It wasn't just anger, it was betrayal, raw and unfiltered. For years, he'd tolerated her controlling behavior, making excuses for her outbursts because of everything she'd sacrificed for them. But this crossed every line. Anna and Emily arrived shortly after, their faces pale with shock as they pieced together what had happened. When Anna heard about Rachel's actions, she exploded. "How could you do this?" she demanded, her voice shaking with rage. "Maya is your granddaughter. She's innocent." Then came the words that left everyone silent. "If you had to choose between me and her, then you chose wrong." Her declaration hung heavy in the air, a final verdict on Rachel's actions. Emily, usually the quieter sibling, stood beside Anna, visibly shaken but resolute. "We don't care about your reasons anymore," she said firmly. "What you did was unforgivable. If it weren't for Rick finding her in time..." She trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. The weight of what could have happened pressed down on all of us like a suffocating blanket. For the first time, I saw the stark contrast between Rachel and her children. Where she was selfish and manipulative, they were protective and united. Anna hugged me tightly, whispering apologies over and over. "This is my fault," she murmured. "I should have stopped her sooner." I shook my head, too overwhelmed to speak. None of this was Anna's fault, or anyone's but Rachel's. Rick returned to the room later, his expression grim. "She won't be getting a penny from me moving forward," he announced. "And I've already contacted a lawyer. We're filing for a restraining order." Hearing those words filled me with both relief and sorrow. Relief because May would finally be safe. Sorrow because no one should have to sever ties with their own mother. Still, there was no denying the truth. Rachel had proven herself incapable of love or compassion. All she cared about was control, and we wouldn't let her destroy us. Rachel's descent into madness began shortly after we cut her off. At first, it was subtle angry phone calls to Rick, tearful voicemails left unanswered, but then it escalated into something far more sinister. One night, around 1 a.m., the sound of pounding on our front door jolted me awake. My heart raced as I clutched May tightly to my chest, fearing the worst. Rick rushed to the door while I hid in the bedroom, too terrified to move. Through the crack in the hallway, I could hear Rachel screaming at the top of her lungs. "Let me see my granddaughter," she shrieked, her voice hoarse but piercing. "You can't keep her from me. She's family." The banging grew louder, more frantic, until Rick finally opened the door just enough to block her entry. Her face was wild, eyes bloodshot, hair disheveled. She looked like a woman possessed. "If you don't let me in," she spat, "I'll call the police and tell them you're neglecting your child." Her words sent chills down my spine. How could someone so consumed with control twist reality this way? Rick stood firm, his voice low but unwavering. "You need to leave. Now." He threatened to involve the authorities if she didn't back down, and only then did she retreat, though not without hurling insults and accusations over her shoulder. But that wasn't the end of it. Over the following days, Rachel bombarded us with texts, dozens of them, each more unhinged than the last. In one particularly disturbing message, she wrote, "May has stolen my place in this family. I'm no longer needed as a mother." Her jealousy was palpable, almost surreal. Here was a grown woman, a grandmother, competing with a newborn for attention and love. It was absurd, yet undeniably dangerous. Another text read, "You think locking me out will fix anything? You've turned everyone against me. All because of that baby." Each word dripped with venom, twisting the truth to paint herself as the victim. She accused me of manipulating Rick, of poisoning Anna and Emily against her, even though they had made their feelings clear long before I said a word. What frightened me most was the realization that Rachel saw me not as a grandchild or a blessing, but as a threat. A tiny infant had somehow become the symbol of everything she feared losing: control, relevance, and her children's devotion. Her behavior wasn't just irrational. It was calculated, manipulative, and deeply unsettling. Every text, every late-night disturbance felt like another attempt to destabilize our fragile peace. Rick tried to shield me from the worst of it, but there was no escaping the tension. Even when we installed security cameras and changed the locks, I couldn't shake the feeling that Rachel was watching, waiting for an opportunity to strike. Her obsession with reclaiming her role in the family bordered on delusional, and it terrified me to think what she might do next. After everything that happened, Rick and I made the difficult decision not to press charges against Rachel, but only because we knew it would drain our energy further, and May needed us more than ever. Instead, we filed for a restraining order ensuring she could never come near our home or daughter again. The judge granted it without hesitation after reviewing the evidence: Rachel's text, her late-night intrusion, and the undeniable danger she posed during the wedding incident. We installed security cameras around the house and kept our phones close at all times, determined to protect what mattered most. Emily took the lead in addressing Rachel's mental state, insisting on having her evaluated by professionals. She accompanied Rachel to appointments with both a psychologist and psychiatrist. The diagnosis came back as generalized anxiety disorder, nothing more, nothing less. "There's no medical basis for her behavior," the doctor explained. "This seems to be rooted in personality traits rather than illness." Emily relayed this information to us with a heavy heart. Though Rachel wasn't clinically unstable, her actions spoke louder than any diagnosis could. Her jealousy, manipulation, and lack of remorse had shattered the family bond beyond repair. Anna and Emily made their positions clear. They were done tolerating Rachel's toxicity. Anna refused to speak to her altogether, while Emily limited contact to occasional updates about logistics, not emotions. For Rick and me, the message was simple: May's safety came first. If Rachel couldn't accept that, then she had no place in our lives or May's. Looking back, I realized how far we'd come since those terrifying hours locked in the bathroom. What started as an act of control spiraled into something far darker, exposing Rachel's inability to prioritize anyone but herself. Yet through it all, Rick, Anna, Emily, and I stood united, a wall of protection around May. It was a painful lesson in boundaries and trust, but also a testament to the strength of love. Families aren't defined by blood alone. They're built on mutual respect and care. And though Rachel might always be May's biological grandmother, she would never hold that title in spirit. I no longer waste energy trying to understand Rachel or justify her actions. To me, she's not just a difficult mother-in-law, she's a real threat. Someone who let her need for control override basic humanity. Yet, despite everything, I feel profoundly lucky. Rick stood by me when it mattered most, and Anna and Emily became the sisters I never had. Together, we formed a shield around May, vowing to protect her from anyone who might harm her, even if that person is family. I hope this is the last time I'll ever have to think about Rachel. My focus now is on building a life filled with love and laughter for May. Still, there are moments late at night, when the house is quiet, that I shiver at the memory of being locked away, abandoned in my darkest hour. Those scars may fade, but will never fully disappear.